policies and bills that was led by President Biden and the Democrats in the House and the Senate is what appealed to especially young voters, and why Democrats did so well in 2022, which he basically admitted that progressive policies are wildly popular, which is almost the entire President Biden's platform, which is, I mean, very left-leaning, very progressive, very liberal policies, crazy things like eliminating childhood poverty, building infrastructure like silicon chip plants so we don't have to get desperate and have to buy them from China, especially if we're getting a war with China. That might be a problem. We may not have any brand new cell phones for a while. Things, just pesky things like that. And it just, the amount of bills that President Biden has passed that has helped us not only pull out of a worldwide Great Depression during this COVID time, but has also created a gateway of infrastructure that no other president has done in 100 years. You would be hard pressed to name another president since FDR that has done much for America in 2 years that Biden has. But how Cancun Cruz was trying to, they passed all these liberal things. That's why those young people are it. But basically, he said, well, that's what made them successful. And it was kind of a backhanded compliment. And he was just eat up with the fact that we stuck to a game plan and just saw it through. No matter how much they lied about it, said how it caused inflation when it didn't, and all this other stuff. Literally, Biden just sat down, and I said this 2 years ago, he's going to be very methodical. He knows how the Senate works. He's been in the Senate for over 30 years. And he has gone policy by policy and just checked it off, just like Santa Claus. He's looked at his list and checked it twice, and he's decided who's naughty and nice, and has just outmaneuvered people like Cancun Cruz, that's more worried about Mexican meth coming across the border than actual Americans. And they're just so obsessed with all the other parts of the world, they don't really even care about Americans. I don't even see one Republican policy that actually helps Americans. I can't think of one. We've heard all the Republicans talking all midterms long, and I can't think of anything they ran on that's actually pro-American that helps everyday Americans. You're muted.
No, I agree with you, Jenny. And when I saw that video, it's very typical Ted Cruz, because he was trying to like diss us or own us. That's their term, own the libs. And one of your TikTok persons kind of jokes about that. You want to own the libs? Okay, all right. Well, that's why you want to own us. By saying that we're good, our policies work. People like us better. I mean, it's just so funny, because I think what he was trying to suggest was all these young people voted for these progressive ideas, like, it's some bad, thing. But basically, to your point, what he was saying was he's admitting our party, our message is not attractive to people. It's only attractive to those we scare. And that is getting smaller and smaller, because they're dying, or unless you're a Proud Boy, whatever. And so I do completely agree with you. He's open. He's saying what we all say. He probably says that to the other MAGAs behind closed doors. You know what? Those young people, we got to do something to attract them. And you can't attract young people by continuously saying, I hate everything. I hate everything. I mean, it's like, it comes to a point where you're like, I don't want to hang around these people.
And an era of technology too, where we have unlimited information and access to 24 hours, 7 day a week news sources and fact checking and stuff like that. Politics are changing, and You have a more educated younger generation than we've ever had before. We have a more tech savvy generation.
Exactly.
But these people have been using technology. If you're 18 years old, you've always had the internet. You've always had technology. You know how to work the Google machine. And because they have that wealth of information and they see the world on fire, I mean, literally, they're going to vote for people that have policies that are helping the world. They're policy-driven people. They're not going to. You're not going to be able to use old school, limited information, Red Scare tactics like the anti-communist scare stuff from the 50s and 60s, where rational people heard that and just think the commies are coming and the commies are coming. You can't pull that crap now, except for the most rural and stupidest voters.
And the ones who are still on Facebook.
Yeah, well, the ones that are on Facebook or the ones that only watch Fox News or OAN.
Exactly. Yeah.
That are limited bandwidth, limited scope, very limited intelligent people that literally fall for this crap and think it's in their best interest to vote for idiots like Cancun Cruz. Topic number 2 dovetails right in that, and we talked about it on the previous show. 72% of women 18 to 29 voted for Dems in the House races. It literally was the counterbalance to older people, retirees, people of retirement age, senior citizens voting overwhelmingly for Republicans. And because that's such a larger generation than the baby boomer is now, one lost the majority of the people that died of COVID were above 60. I mean, for one, so there's probably approximately between the undercounted and the counted about 2 million Americans that are dead now because of COVID alone. The majority of those, probably 80% of those people were seniors. And many more had to retire early because of long COVID. And
hey, Jen, you made a very good point in the last one. I just realized when you were talking about this topic as well. This is the first time that we've seen a sign that there's a generation of ours that can't be hoodwinked or they have the ability because they grew, like you said, they've grown up with the internet. It's not something new. Whereas the people still on Facebook, they can still be conned. The people that are like 18 to 29, they know how to Google and double check, and because they've been catfished dating people, they learn how to protect themselves. And so you can't say socialism. That doesn't really work with them because to them it's just
most of them are pro-socialist anyway, and so they see socialism as a necessary tool. They see government is a necessary tool, and whether old people like it or not, you don't have people that grew up in the Red Scare. These people were born after the Berlin Wall fell.
Exactly.
Even the younger millennials that are in their early to late 30s, they were born in 87, 88, 89, the late 80s millennials, maybe the early millennials still kind of remember communism and Russia and all that, or the Soviet Union. But for the most part, if you were born during my high school years, which were 85 to 88, if you were born then, you've never known a world with the Soviet Union. You don't remember it. And so you just remember the internet starting to boom in the 90s, the smartphones, smart devices in the 2000s. You've grown up with the different social medias and the TikToks and the Vines and all the, the MySpaces, all these tools, all these virtual tools have been at their fingertips, and they're a technology generation, as is I call them the Zennials, the younger millennials and Generation Z, the baby Zs. That's why you see them voting so differently, because the younger millennials and the Zennials both overwhelmingly vote for Democrats. And just like they did, the older millennials voted for Obama in 2008. And so you're seeing two of our two youngest voting adult generations overwhelmingly being more progressive, wanting progressive politics, seeing that they need to tackle these issues that our generation, Generation X, and our parents' generation, the baby boomers, chose to play politics with us. That chose the Democrats buried their heads in the sand with George W. Bush over the wars for profit, and we saw Republicans spend irresponsibly since Nixon, and has created a national debt that's ridiculous. It's just being addressed now with Biden, and you're seeing Biden go very, very progressive because he knows that that's the deal. He also has the most diverse staff that any American president's ever had, including Obama. Look at his staff. Look at who he's appointing for the Supreme Court judge. Look at every decision he's made, and look at the makeup of his staff, and just look at the last three presidents. And Biden's looks like the United Nations.
Don't you think? Hey, Jenny, don't you think that in kind of a way, and this is, I'm generalizing, but it's not for everyone. But in kind of a way, the millennials and the what do you call them? The
baby Zers, the Zennials.
Baby Zers, the Zennials. They basically were saying, they see my parents, who are the Gen Xers.
Right.
I've seen them. I've seen what they've said. I've seen what they talk about religion. I see what they say about things, and I don't like it. They're basically saying, I don't want to be like that.
Yeah.
I don't want to be an evangelical who constantly hates everything and is married 2 or 3, 4 times, and and so forth. And basically, they're basically saying, I mean, in kind of a way, not all of them, but they're kind of saying, I don't want a world like that. And so, it in a way, it is inspiring to see them, and say, I don't want to be like that. I want to be more like Jenny. I want to be more like Biden, someone more progressive. I want to be someone who loves other people. That's good.
I think most of all, since Obama, especially, they've seen what change can do. And they can see that we can change the world with technology, that we can make our own world. We don't have to be confined to the medieval, feudal politics of 18th and 19th century America. And I think the 21st century thinking is really starting to come to fruition. I think this, just like the 1920s was really the start of the 20th century for the United States, I believe our real start in the 21st century is now. I think the 2020s has forced us to become a more modern, forward-thinking nation.
Good point, yeah.
And I think we literally don't have a choice. But we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll go to segment number 3 right after this. Hey, everybody. You can catch us on your favorite audio podcast platform, Spotify, and all Apple Store, the Google machine, and whoever else does podcasts. We're on there. We broke in, and we're staying. So enjoy the 2 Queers in the Truck on your favorite audio podcast platform. Thanks for listening or watching. Bye-bye. And we are back with some more 2 Queers. And it dovetails right into our next topic, which is Biden underrated? And is he the best president of our lifetime? Because we definitely just saw the worst one with Trump. He was an absolute disaster.
Yeah.
But if you base it on not what Biden says, but what he's done work-wise, and you look at the list of accomplishments he's done in less than 2 years, he's pulled us out of a worldwide depression, a worldwide pandemic, record amount of vaccinations in the shortest period of time in American history, passed 50 to 60 pieces of landmark legislation that have completely changed America, eliminated or virtually eliminated childhood poverty in this country by over 50%. Wages have gone up for middle class and lower income families anywhere from 24 to 42% in the last 2 years, which has outpaced inflation. That's one of the reasons Democrats, for example, especially working Democrats, aren't buying in to the Republican lie about inflation and go, yeah, but I'm making more
Inflation
money than
scares
I
you.
was 2 years ago.
Yep.
Most of my friends are making more money than they were 2 years ago. Wages have gone up. More American workers are making $15 an hour or more right now than they have ever. So whether we have a minimum wage of $15 an hour or de facto minimum wage of $15 an hour or more is kicking into gear because of supply and demand. More infrastructure, more planning, more progressive politics has created a brand new America, whether we want to admit it or not. And we saw it play out and get rewarded. That comes from the top. That came from President Biden. My answer to both questions is I think he's not only the best president we've had in my lifetime, I think he's been the best president and maybe even slightly better than FDR. FDR didn't have to go up against as many things. Biden has gotten us involved with Ukraine, but has kept us out of a land war in Europe. He's successfully navigated both supporting the Ukraine, which is actually winning the war now, rallied the EU, rallied NATO, expanded NATO and the EU without triggering a nuclear war or a war against China. Despite China and Russia's objections, he's been able to balance both of those other military and economic superpowers. Something even FDR could do. Yeah. And the guy's headlong into a World War II. I think what he's done is nothing short of brilliant, and I think he's a way better president than Obama was, policy-wise. I think he was a way better president than Clinton. I know clearly way better than W or the former guy. I don't even think there's a comparison in the amount of decision making, the level-headedness, the diversity of his cabinet, which is why I think we're seeing so many progressive policies. It's not just Biden. It is that you're seeing so many different walks of life and so many different types of people in his inner circle that diversity is showing up as nothing short of being brilliant. And I'm curious to see what you think.
I think that if he does not run in 2024, which I don't think he will, which I think would be good for him and his family, I think when he decides and it becomes like official in a year or however, by the summer or whatever the term it is, that he's not going to be running, that someone else is going to be running, I think we're all going to look back and go, he was one of the most important presidents to come around at the most important time when this country needed him. And you look at the pandemic, you look at democracy, you look at post-Trump. You're right. I believe when we look back, it will be like one of those, we're going to miss you, Papa Biden. You know what I mean? And I do think that we all are going to embrace him. I don't think he's going to be like a lame duck. I think people are going to want him to succeed as he finishes. And I think Democrats will benefit from that in 2024 because it will be, this is who saved us. Do we want DeSantis and them? Do we want Trump and craziness? And I think that is something, I agree with you. I think this is this midterm showed, and it, beyond my wildest dreams, I was planning for, so many things. And it literally, I was surprised on how the country decided. I knew Charlotte would, Mecklenburg, I knew we would, because that's where we live. To see those other Kansas, Pennsylvania, Colorado, you see all those other places that they need to win. They can't win without those places. But to see them say, nope, I don't want crazy, was exactly what it was. Almost like, gosh, we need them, and they came through. Now, it's not over. You still got to keep fighting, but it gives you a little hope. It's like it was amazing. And we'll see, as we move forward, but I agree with you. He's a very important person at the time. And I don't think I don't think Bernie could have stepped up to the shoes. I don't think any other person. It required someone who was like a grandpa, who had the experience and who didn't care if you called him Sleepy Joe.
Yeah.
He wasn't a child. Yeah.
I think the difference between him and Bernie is that Bernie is a lot more performative. He is the progressive version of Trump. He's a very one-note wonder. It has no track record of success other than just being loud. And I think the difference between him and a Biden is Biden's been at the forefront of politics for a long time, but he's actually been effective. So he's been a good leader. He was a phenomenal vice president. He was the one that led Obama's economic turnaround team. And so you saw him tackle these issues before with great success. And then he's made women of color a priority in his administration. He's made diverse personalities. He has a gay, transportation secretary. He has a second in command in health and human services as a transgender woman. You're seeing him make decisions, the SCOTUS appointment went right too. So I'm going to appoint a woman of color. He didn't even back off. His vice president is a woman of color. And he literally is somebody that was hypercritical of him in the 2020 race and criticized him deeply that Biden had the ability to say, I don't care. She's qualified to do the job. If she's critical of me, there may be a reason why she was critical of me. And he goes on. You see him getting this legislation, these landmark legislation passed, and he celebrates for about a day, and then he just goes on. And he's been very methodical and very effective. And that is the brilliance of his leadership. And I'm going to tell you, I don't think anybody in America could have done what he's done. I think he had the right experience. He got us out of the Great Recession in 2009. And he saw some of the mistakes Obama made. And I think that's why he got us out of Afghanistan. So it's critical we get out of Afghanistan. We don't need to be there anymore. A huge mistake that Obama left our troops in Afghanistan and left them in those wars and continued to fight those wars way past what he should have. Huge criticism of Obama. It's something I criticized him then was why is he continuing a Republican war for no reason, especially after we killed bin Laden in 2011. But I'm going to go into topic 4 real quick because we ate into about half of that. Louisiana rejects a ban on prison slavery this week. But they kept the ban. They didn't do a ban of prison slavery. So they reinforced that you can use slave labor in prison.
Oh, okay. I see what you mean. Okay.
Prisons, some states allow, they make like $1.50 an hour or something like that. Very toxic, very unethical, anti-constitutional thing. But Louisiana made sure they kept a prison slavery alive and well. Typically affects, obviously, the majority of the people that are nationwide affects Black Americans more than anything, which is not a surprise that they have more Black Americans in prison and that they also use them for slave labor in these prison camps. And so Louisiana made sure that that practice could still happen in that state. That was one of the things they voted on last Tuesday. And so, it was talked about on the Daily Show. And so it just is very bizarre that in 2022, any form of slavery, which is unconstitutional, is still allowed. You kind of wonder what century Louisiana was really in. It's just kind of bizarre.
But you know what, Jenny? That's why with the shootout between 18 and 29 voters, and with the wall that was put up against the MAGA extremists and so forth, the next time we hear someone like Ted Cruz, which you will, he'll say it again, and Josh Hawley, all those guys, the next time we see them say we want a constitutional convention, we should say, okay, because there's some things we want to change.
Right.
I mean, we have to start calling their bluff. And I love the fact that in a way, Biden called their bluff. And he said in the last couple of days, he was being criticized. He said, this election is not about inflation. This election is about democracy. And I was watching some of the news, even the Republicans on CNN, Democrats on CNN were saying, I don't understand why Biden is not running on this. That is the number one issue for Americans. It's inflation. Biden, because of the people he saw, I think he made the decision, and the people who understood said, listen, we're not going to get those people anyway. Let's focus on this issue, democracy, women's reproductive rights, those kind of things, and stopping people, MAGA Republicans. That worked,
He ran on a record. So,
Yes.
Biden has had 2 years of success, done, I think, a miracle turnaround in the United States. And he's got a phenomenal record. Why wouldn't you run on that? Why all Democrats should run on it? Like, look at these. These are wildly popular ideas of eliminating or working towards eliminating childhood poverty, eliminating poverty in general, expanding Medicaid. Like all these ideas, building infrastructure, which makes us a stronger nation. Like there's literally nothing that he's passed that's unpopular. Every time he gets passed, it seems like there's going to be a ticker tape parade. Why wouldn't you run on your record? And Biden has, which is brilliant, which sets us up for 2024. We will take our last break, and we'll be right back with some more Two Queers in a Truck.
Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for watching us on Two Queers in a Truck. Don't forget, you can watch us anytime at your leisure on our video podcast platforms like Facebook and YouTube. But you can also listen to us, either this show or any of our past shows, on our audio podcast platforms like Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, and all of the other ones. So once again, thank you for watching Two Queers in a Truck. I hope you enjoy our show.
We are back. And Lady G gets the fee-fees and the vapors for Herschel Walker. I always love when Republicans say that women shouldn't hold office because they're too emotional. They've said that about Hillary. They've said it about Vice President Harris. They've said it about all women that run for office, how we're just too emotional to hold office. But old Lady G, the grand dame of Republican politics, just went full on when the runoff was announced. You got on many of the talking head shows with Herschel Walker and without him, and just cried and said, we need to support Herschel Walker because we need to make sure that the Republican Party lets everybody know that we need Black Americans in our party and that we support them. And we need the support from Black Americans, basically saying we need to do what's good for the Republican Party. Not that they have any policies that are good for Black Americans, but we need Herschel Walker in so it helps us. And it's basically the main point, but he's like crying and sobbing and just on all the feels. And you just saw the dramatics of Lindsey Graham and just what an idiot. And Chris Walker's just sitting there like an idiot, like a bump on a log. He didn't even know what to say. You kind of look at him like, dude, you're kind of losing it. Well, what a preposterous, racist. Well, first of all, I guess has Lindsey Graham just not met Reverend Warnock, Senator Warnock?
I guess he didn't know he's Black. Yeah.
Like it's almost like he's acting like he's running against Ossoff, the white guy.
Exactly.
Another senator from Georgia. I'm like, bro, him. You've already got a sitting senator.
Yep.
That Herschel Walker is running against. That's not a babbling moron, a wife beater, an abortionist, and a liar, and a proven liar, an idiot, toxic idiot. Like, if you're going to convince Black Americans to run on the Republican ticket, he certainly is not the best and brightest, even from Georgia, I would think.
Exactly.
I would hope they could find one other person that has at least 2 more brain cells than that moron. Like that's not a selling point. Like there is a reason why the Republican Party is over 90% white. It could be all their racist policies. It could be all the mythology around the all black people are welfare queens and stuff like that, or drug addicts or criminals, but they openly say this, and go out of their way to make sure they get redlined and then excuse it, you know. I don't know. Maybe that lie they've been saying for the last 50, 60 years, maybe that's why black people don't vote for Republicans. I don't know. Call me kooky. I know if I was black, the last person I would vote for is Republicans. You know, I wouldn't necessarily have to be a Democrat, but I'm sure as hell not vote for a Republican. You know?
I really appreciate the fact that was it the week before the election that African American pastor at the big mega church in Atlanta, you know, he gave his sermon about, you know, you can't fool us with Herschel Walker, you know, I'm paraphrasing all the things. It was a really powerful sermon, and it was exactly what I think most middle class, most African Americans who can think, which they can, and he basically was saying, "You think we're so stupid? We're not."
Right.
And his sermon was, "We don't need a walker, we need a runner."
Right.
And I thought that was exactly what they were saying, and you could tell there were signs when he tried to do that stunt in front of this apartment complex about evictions, and he was saying, you know, Warnock has been evicting people and so forth, and Herschel Walker, it wasn't going right. And there were some of the black residents that said, "Man, you're a joker." You know, they were saying that in the background. They were using their own profanity. It's exactly how the people in Georgia, and especially in the big cities, Atlanta and you know, and whatever, and even the rural counties, they think of Herschel Walker as a joke. And yeah, well, yeah, exactly. The sad part is 70% of white women voted for him in Georgia.
Yeah.
And
well, because he's Republican.
Exactly. And so I do think that you're right. It highlights they're willing, and we know this though, they're willing to bring in the dumbest anything just so that way they can't lose. It's more pride also. They just can't stand losing. And so I do appreciate the fact that
don't you think
there
it's
are
a
some
little
Democrats
bit of a power trip too that
yes,
they got obliterated. Georgia Republicans got obliterated in 2020 when both Warnock and Ossoff won in the same day, and it was a huge rejection on a national level. But on a statewide election, Georgia's would say, "We want two Dems. The two people you ran that last cycle were idiots," and they now served up Herschel Walker, that's a bigger idiot, abusive criminal, a liar. You're talking about somebody that has zero character, just zero. I mean, his own son, his own gay Republican son, speaks out against Herschel Walker. You know, he got on this week.
Yeah, he sure did.
Queens, and he just flamed the Republican Party on how stupid they are. Just destroyed them and said, "No, this Herschel Walker is not how you win." This is his own son flaming him. It'd be like Don Jr. flaming his dad. Except, you know, Don Jr. is not out of the closet yet. But anyway, number 6, we're going to flip it over to our home state, our birth state, good old Texas, and talk about what happened last week. And couple statistics from that. One, 9.6 million registered voters did not vote last week in Texas. 1.39 million, almost 1.4, are eligible but did not register. When you combine that, that is 11 million Texans that sat out of last week's election. Abbott got 4.4 million votes. Beto got 3.5 million. Their combined total was just short of 8 million. That means that 11 million people sat out of last week's election that could have voted, had the potential to vote, but 8 million chose to vote. That to me, the fact that 11 million people said, screw it, for whatever reason, I just don't want to participate. I don't want to register. I don't want to go through the hassle. I know I'm eligible. I just don't want to participate. And the fact that 9.6 million were registered, that means all they had to do was go vote and chose not to vote. But we also had an interesting thing that happened in Houston, which is inside Harris County, but they shut down polling systems early because they ran out of ballots, paper ballots.
No. Mm-hmm.
Way early. And the Texas Supreme Court allowed it in an emergency session.
Mm-hmm.
A Republican-controlled Texas Supreme Court. And systemic voter suppression in the big counties and the big cities of Texas has gone on for decades. New voter laws, intended to suppress the vote, stripping away weekend voting, no drive-through voting this cycle. They've done everything they can to suppress the vote. One, I'm not surprised by those numbers. That 11 people sat out is not shocking at all. There's no fucking way an Abbott should beat a Beto in any universe, alternative universe or anything. But what the Republicans have effectively done, and it's what they want to do all over the country, is only allow a certain amount of people to vote and mentally conceive of that vote. And they've done a very powerful job of suppressing the vote in predominantly Latinx areas. And they've made it so scary, and their histrionics has made it so scary. You see that a lot. You see that a lot, and even in city areas. And of course, effectively, if you don't have ballots, you don't have enough printed on ballots, it's kind of hard to vote. And the fact that Beto should be contesting that alone, because with as many voters that are in the Houston area and the Harris County area, that may have been the margin of victory. Because Houston area overwhelmingly voted Democrat in 2020. It almost carried the state for Biden. There were so many votes in that deal. And what did they do? They made sure there wasn't enough room in the inn this time around, which to me is surreal in 2022 that could happen. But I don't know what you think about that. To be, if you've conditioned a population for 27 years that you're not good enough to vote and have done everything you can to keep people from voting, that's a scary deal in democracy. This is one place where democracy definitely lost.
Yeah, I agree with you. I am just, all I can say is the party in Texas and the national party, and in Florida is a different situation. The party in Texas has to look at that state and say, this is the tools that we have. This is the game that we have to play. And we have to play the game, good or bad, with terrible referees. We've got to be able to play it this way. Stop focusing on these Gen Xers, Gen Xers and boomers. They're never going to switch. Thought they would, they're not. Focus on the young people. Focus on, if you're mad at this state growing, if you're mad, change things, and that's the message I didn't see. I saw it from Beto, but just Beto. I didn't see it from like a whole message. And it's just like you whatever they're doing is not working. They almost need a whole new Democratic Party chairperson and everything. And I don't know if we need a new Democratic chairperson in North Carolina. We do need a new Democratic executive director in North Carolina, because she has been in that office for 10 years and we have lost 10 Senate races. At what point do you have to say, listen, I'm sorry, you tried, but you're not working.
Yeah.
We're going to hire, because that's a paid salary position here in North Carolina, the executive director. We need a different person to come in. And you almost need to have Beto run the Democratic Party in Texas. Elect him as the new chairperson.
It's interesting that both North Carolina and Texas, which have a lot of similarities in demographics and makeup, and actually the rural versus city mix, they're almost identical in a lot of ways, percentage-wise. I mean, it makes you wonder where Democrats have had decent success in the state. We have a Democratic governor. We have a two-term Democratic governor now. We have a 7-7 split with National House of Representatives in the state, which wasn't that way when I moved here in 2018. And we've made significant inroads. Of course, in the big cities, we've been wildly successful, not only with local policies like, non-discrimination ordinances last year.
Exactly.
Over 15 metropolitan and non-metropolitan areas and counties that passed it, including both Mecklenburg County and the city of Charlotte. And we've even had local Republicans even sign off on it. So progressive policies work in North Carolina, just like they work in the big cities of Texas. But somewhere between the city of Dallas, the city of Houston, San Antonio, Austin, and El Paso are predominantly Democrats. Predominantly, most of the city leaders in those areas are registered Democrats, and very, very progressive for the most part. Very similar to Charlotte. What's weird, and because of the majority of the population in Texas, how Republicans have held that up and kept or have encouraged Democrats in those areas not to vote or participate in democracy is either a disconnect in messaging with Democrats and or how effective Republicans have been legally suppress the vote in that state. And I do believe it's a combination of both. I think when a populace gets beaten so down, like the Nazis were barely 20-30% of the population in Germany, but still were able to control it for a decade with an iron fist. The Republican parties are, the Nazis of Texas, and they've been able to run that state for 27 years uninterrupted. There's got to be a reason why. We have to sit down as a political party in that state, and they need to go, what the fuck? like how do we have such a disconnect? It's kind of like when you have a sales team and there's a certain department that's just not producing what their historic potential is. What's wrong with this picture? Because the last Democratic governor we had was Mal Richards in the early 90s, and then we haven't even sniffed a win. I mean, Beto gave the hardest run he could give. There was nothing left in Beto's tank to win this. And quite frankly, I'm going to say this. I don't think there was another Texan that could have done as good as he did.
Oh, I don't think so either. Yeah. He was, but you know what I noticed, Jen? What I noticed in Texas,
Democrats and Republicans in Texas.
No, there's not. What I noticed in Texas and North Carolina, very similar in certain ways. You have these major counties, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, El Paso, Austin, Travis County, heavily Democrats. Okay, Fort Worth is purple, mix. In North Carolina, you have Wake County, Durham County, and Mecklenburg County, heavily Democrat. But the parties in both states have been running for the last 10 years. We need to worry about the suburban white voter. Everything is based on the suburban white rural voter. At what point do we say, I'm not going to focus on the suburban white voter as much anymore because I can't win them. Let me just overperform like Georgia. They have to overperform in Atlanta, and they do, and that's what gets that's what puts them over the edge. They have rural counties too, but those two big counties, the Macon area and the Georgia Fulton County, and even Cobb County, for example, which is kind of like their Union County, overperformed so much for Democrats that it's enabled them to kind of flip it. We need to say we're not going to stop worrying about the suburban voter or the rural voter. We're going to really focus on the people that we know and get them out high percentages. And that's what we haven't done. We keep saying, and I appreciate Cynthia Wallace's, group who ran for Congress, and she formed this group, Rural Southern Project. when she said she was doing that, I know she was kind of basing it off of Stacey Abrams kind of thing as well.
Right.
My first instinct was, I'm glad you're doing that, but it doesn't do any good if you can't flip them. Why don't you focus on the people that are actually registered in Mecklenburg County and get the young people out at higher percentages? You know, that seems to me like a low-hanging fruit, you know?
Well, and two, you demographically, I would be going after the same people that marched in 2020. The majority of
Exactly.
Because when we were out there, we saw the majority of the people out there were young organizers.
Exactly.
Why
Exactly.
aren't we selling to that group? And
Yes.
I will say Mecklenburg County has done a better job of this.
Yeah.
And you've seen us, we dominate local politics. We're pushing an 80 percentile at times. It's overwhelmingly a Democratic county and a Democratic city, and it has been for quite a while. But one of the things we've done a real good job of is energizing younger voters. A lot of our leadership groups are focusing on younger voters, and Texas has an overwhelming amount of young voters, and those are the people I think that were the registered and didn't vote. And I think they've done a really piss poor job. And I'm talking about the Democratic Party has done a very piss poor job, and even better a little bit. Like some of the people that he interviewed and highlighted were white Republicans that flipped over to his side.
Exactly. Yep.
And you just didn't see him engaging with the youth enough, in my opinion.
Like he did when he ran for Senate.
Correct. And he was much closer to winning in the Senate than he was as governor. And I think also the fuckery in Harris County.
Yeah.
I do think that out a little. I mean, even there's so many people there. There's 3, 4, 5, 6 million people in that general area. And there's no telling how many of those counties they suppressed the voting. And clearly Houston, they did for sure. They didn't want to repeat of 2020.
Sure.
And I mean, even if it cost them 500,000, 600,000 votes, that would have been almost a dead heat. Then, because, Beto lost by less than 1 million votes. But yeah, that 9.6 million people, we need to identify who those people are and find out how to engage them, because they're probably mostly registered Democrats.
I think that lady who lost for Attorney General, which I'm just so distraught about, I think she hopefully has increased her profile, and I hope that she decides to run for again at the state level.
Won't matter if we don't fix the mechanics.
I agree. Yep, that's true.
I think that's one of the successes of Biden is that he looked at what Democrats did wrong in 2016. He also looked at what happened in the Obama 8 years and said, I'm not going to repeat Obama's mistakes. And I'm going to run very progressive, very modern campaign. And then I'm going to be a very moderate president because I'm old. This isn't my world. It's my grandkids' world. And I got to get in here and fix things fast. I've got to get in here and triage this country. Politics be damned. I'm going to peel my ears back and I'm just going to go to work. And I think the Democratic Party needs to take that same attitude and just say, diversity, whatever, that's all important. But at the end of the day, we got to go to work. We have got to roll up our sleeves, figure out the statistics with our modern technology, and get some of these young Democrat leaders, get in there with their Google machines and their iPhones and all their tools and say, how do we identify the missed opportunities, and making sure that's who we target. And getting and like you said, getting the turnout in the urban areas in a Texas, Georgia, and a Florida, where typically more blue.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, you can still campaign in the rural counties, and I think that's great. But you better concentrate on the cities, and you better connect with the people who didn't vote.
Yep, I agree.
And so, but that is the last topic. That is the end of our show. And we will leave on a little dancing queen for all them big old Proud Boy queens out there that are just buying every day.
That's right. Babu. See you next week.
Hey, y'all, thanks for watching Two Queers in the Truck. Y'all be safe out here. Turkey Day's coming up, and there'll be a lot of traveling and a lot of bad weather. So watch out for the crazies, the MAGAs, and have a great week. Bye, dude.
Babu.